Casinos are built on a simple promise: play long enough, and the house wins. But in the early 1960s, one quiet mathematics professor walked into Nevada with something the casinos had never faced before. Not a hidden device, not marked cards, not an accomplice at the table. He carried mathematics and a system that could turn Blackjack's built-in advantage against the house. His name was Edward O. Thorp. He did not look like a gambler. He was a university professor with a doctorate in mathematics, more comfortable with equations and computers than smoke-filled casino floors. That was precisely what made him dangerous. While most players relied on instinct, superstition, or a favorite betting pattern, Thorp asked a colder question. Was every hand of blackjack really independent of the cards that had already been played? The answer was no. Blackjack is unusual among casino games because cards are removed from the deck. When small cards disappear, more tens and aces remain. Those high cards can help the player. Blackjacks become more likely, doubled bets become more valuable, and the dealer has a greater chance of going over 21. The odds do not stay perfectly fixed. They move as the deck changes. That sounds obvious today. At the time, proving it and turning it into a usable system required enormous work. Thorp used an IBM computer to analyze millions of possible situations. The machine filled a room and had only a fraction of the power of a modern phone, but it could test probabilities faster than any person. Slowly, the numbers revealed a crack in the casino's armor. Thorp developed a way to track the changing balance of the deck. The goal was not to memorize every card. It was to estimate when the remaining cards were favorable. When the house had the advantage, the player would bet small. When the mathematics shifted toward the player, the bet would rise. A tiny edge, applied carefully and repeatedly, could change the outcome over time. But a theory on paper was not enough. Thorp needed to prove that it worked with real money, under real pressure, in real casinos. A wealthy gambler named Manny Kimmel provided $10,000 for the experiment. Together, they traveled to Nevada to test the system. Imagine the scene. Bright tables, dealers moving at speed, pit bosses watching from across the room, chips clicking, drinks arriving, players talking, and Thorp performing calculations silently while pretending to be an ordinary tourist. A single mistake could erase the advantage. A noticeable change in his bets could attract attention. Yet the system worked. Over a series of sessions, the bankroll grew. The casinos did not applaud the discovery. According to Thorp's accounts, the treatment became increasingly hostile. Dealers shuffled early, changed procedures, or watched him closely. In some stories, he described suspicious distractions and even physical discomfort after drinks. Whether every incident happened exactly as remembered is less important than the larger reaction. Casinos understood that this quiet professor had found something real. If you enjoy stories about the hidden systems behind money, power, and chance, subscribe to System Beneath. We uncover the rules working underneath the surface and the people who learn to use them. In 1962, Thorp published Beat the Dealer. The book did something extraordinary. It presented mathematical evidence that the house advantage in blackjack could be overcome under the right conditions. It became a bestseller and introduced card counting to the public. Suddenly, casinos were no longer facing one professor. They were facing thousands of players who believed the game could be beaten. The response changed blackjack itself. Casinos began using multiple decks more often. They shuffled earlier, before counters could reach the most favorable part of the shoe. They watched betting patterns, trained surveillance teams, and barred players they considered too skilled. Card counting was not the same as secretly altering cards or using a mechanical cheating device. But a casino is private property, and it could simply tell a successful counter to leave. Here is the twist. Thorp's discovery did not make blackjack easy money. An advantage can be small, temporary, and surrounded by risk. A player needs a large enough bankroll to survive losing streaks, perfect discipline, accurate counting, correct decisions, and favorable rules. Even when the mathematics is positive, short-term results can be brutal. Winning in expectation does not mean winning tonight. That distinction is the heart of Thorp's story. Most gamblers chase outcomes. Thorp studied processes. He was not trying to predict the next card with certainty. He was identifying moments when the probabilities had moved slightly in his favor, then risking more only when the evidence justified it. That way of thinking carried him far beyond Las Vegas. After blackjack, Thorp turned to financial markets. He applied probability, risk control, and statistical mispricing to investing. He later became a successful hedge fund manager and one of the early figures in quantitative finance. The same principle remained. Do not ask what you hope will happen. Ask what the odds are, how large your edge is, and what happens if you are wrong many times in a row. Thorp also worked with information theory pioneer Claude Shannon on an early wearable computer designed to predict roulette outcomes. The device was experimental, but the idea was decades ahead of its time. Use technology to detect a physical bias in what appeared to be pure chance. Again, the goal was not magic, it was measurement. This is why Edward Thorp mattered so much. He challenged an industry powered by the belief that every player eventually loses. He demonstrated that some games contain information, and information can have value. Casinos adapted, surveillance improved, and the battle between advantage players and the house became a contest of mathematics, discipline, and detection. But there is also a warning hidden inside the victory. Thorp succeeded because he rejected the fantasy of effortless wealth. He tested his ideas, measured risk, protected his bankroll, and accepted that even a correct strategy could lose in the short term. Most casino customers do the opposite. They confuse a lucky streak with skill and increase their bets when emotion is strongest. The casino's greatest advantage may not be the rules printed on the table. It may be human behavior, impatience, overconfidence, and the desire to recover a loss immediately. Thorp's real weapon was not counting alone. It was emotional control. One mathematician did not destroy the casino industry. In an unexpected way, his book may even have made blackjack more popular. But he permanently changed the mythology of the casino. The house was powerful, not invincible. Under the lights and noise, behind every card and every chip, there was a system. And for a brief moment, Edward Thorp understood it better than the people who owned the room. The lesson is not that gambling is a reliable path to wealth. It is that systems become vulnerable when someone stops believing the story and starts measuring the reality. In casinos, markets, and everyday decisions, the person who understands probability sees a different world. And sometimes that person can beat the house.